Joining me now is the Deputy Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Daisy Cooper. We love seeing you on my show. The Lib Dems are sometimes reluctant to do GB News.
Oh, I'm not.
You're not.
I'm always here.
We're happy to see you. So thank you very much for coming in.
Pleasure.
Now, I know you've been running from studio to studio. We just spoke to the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, James Murray. He seems to be saying that there's no problem that Rachel Reeves kept this £4.2 billion of surplus secret on November the 4th when she gave her, let's call it her scaremongering Cheerios speech, as we all now recognise it, early in the morning, warning that tax rises were coming because she just wanted to do that to increase her fiscal headroom. I then pointed out to him that it was a complete deceit and a lie to make out that there was a 20 billion black hole in the finances when there wasn't. He is trying to justify it as saying, well, the Chancellor has to make choices depending on the information she receives at the time. What's your reaction to that excuse? Because I didn't find it particularly credible. I made the point to Mr Murray, why didn't she tell us that we were 4.2 billion in surplus at the end of October?
Yeah. So I think the Chancellor has got some very serious questions to answer, and I really hope that she comes herself to Parliament tomorrow to answer questions from members of Parliament rather than sending another minister in her stead. Honestly, the government obviously is democratically elected. The government can make decisions. The government can make those choices. But I think that, if she's got one piece of information and then goes out and says that something else is happening, that's very destabilising for confidence of households and of the market. So she's got very serious questions to answer about why on earth she went out there to do that pre-budget speech, which is almost unheard of in this country. We don't have that system in place. I do think there are broader questions about whether the entire budget process is fit for purpose. I think it isn't. I think the public would benefit from there being far more transparency and to adopt a system where we see a draft budget and then we have proper debate over a period of time.
More transparency than we had over the last 6 weeks of pitch rolling of a budget. We're going to put up tax. Oh, no, we're not. We're going to freeze thresholds. Almost every aspect of that budget was leaked in some way or the other. Now, a previous Chancellor, Hugh Dalton, had to resign when he went to the pub with a journalist and leaked one aspect of the budget he was about to deliver. So you want more transparency. How much transparency do you want?
Look, I don't think leaks are transparency, because don't forget that amongst all those leaks, many of those leaks have come to pass, but many of them haven't. And so the public were left not knowing which taxes would go up, which ones wouldn't, whether there was going to be an overhaul of particular tax systems, whether other ones were going to be would just be left to have tinkering around the edges. What I would like to see is a budget that is published up front as a draft budget, rather than just giving MPs 4 days to debate that budget. We should have some serious time to debate it properly, to see all the different arguments so you can tease out the differences between, say, the Treasury and the OBR.
Then you're in danger, perhaps, of a budget being tweaked to the disgruntlement of backbenchers. I mean, that's already been the case with the last one.
That was going to be my last.
Well, I was going to say, and then to the disgruntlement of rival MPs. Why aren't you calling for the Chancellor and indeed the PM, if he knew about the surplus and also didn't tell the public, to resign?
Because I think that the Chancellor needs to come and answer questions in the House of Commons first.
Hang on a minute, Daisy Cooper. How many times in the last Parliament did you repeatedly call for the likes of Boris Johnson and then Rishi Sunak and indeed Liz Truss to resign? Why are you only ever calling for people on the right to resign and not people on the left? Surely if the Chancellor has lied to the public, lied to politicians, lied to the House and misled the markets, it's a resignation offence, open and shut.
Your personal data could be exposed right now without you even knowing it. And if you want it removed, use incogni.com/GB News in the description now and get 60% off an annual plan on us. Incogni reach out to the data brokers on your behalf and request that your information be deleted from their databases. And they'll keep sending removal requests to make sure your data stays gone. Sometimes your information ends up on strange, obscure websites that automated tools just can't reach. And that's why Incogni just launched their unlimited plan with a feature called Custom Removals. With this, you can submit any link where your personal information appears, literally paste in the URL, and their privacy team will investigate and work to get it removed. And getting started is super easy. Hit the link in the description, create an Incogni account, and tell them whose data you want removed. Grant them permission to work on your behalf, and then all you've got to do is sit back and relax. They'll keep you updated along the way. Incogni is totally risk-free for 30 days. If you try it, it's not for you, you'll get a full refund. So take back control of your personal data today with Incogni. Use our code GBNews at checkout via the link in the description, as you'll get 60% off an annual plan.
Look, in the last Parliament, I think there were very, very good reasons as to why we did call for Boris Johnson and Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak to resign. And if you look,
why were you calling for Rishi Sunak to resign? What did he have to resign over?
I can't remember whether maybe it wasn't him. It was probably many of the other ministers.
Hang on a minute. You'd called for so many people to resign that you can't remember why you called for them to resign.
Well, let's remember the last Parliament was in such chaos.
For Partygate. So you've called for Boris Johnson to resign over Partygate, Kwasi Kwarteng to resign over the budget chaos, Rishi Sunak over tax affairs and COVID fraud losses. You asked for Priti Patel to resign over refugee handling. You asked for Richard Sharp to resign over the Gary Lineker row. He was the BBC chairman. Let's not forget, and we'll get onto this in a minute, you're constantly asking for Robbie Gibb to resign. And you don't want the Chancellor or the PM to resign when they have been found to have lied in a budget.
Well, on all of those previous cases, we have been asking questions before it got to the point that we called for them to resign. I think the case of Rachel Reeves, she hasn't answered questions yet. No, Boris Johnson was asked several times. He was asked questions in Parliament several times over. He was given many occasions to answer questions in the House of Commons chamber.
You were still calling for him to resign before he answered questions in Parliament, though, weren't you?
No, but there were several questions asked.
Is it just because the Lib Dems are quite cosy with Labour and you don't mind it because they're on the left like you are? You'd much rather have a go at righties.
There is absolutely nothing cosy about the Liberal Democrats and Labour right now.
Cosy at they have PMQs
they
on
are
Wednesday.
They are bringing in a stealth tax on both households and on high streets. We have called that out. We have slammed their budget as having nothing in it to promote growth, nothing in it to alleviate the cost of living. That isn't a sign of a cosy relationship. That's us being a constructive opposition that holds the government to account.
You say that, Daisy Cooper, but I watched PMQs before the budget was going to be delivered. Now, it had already been pitch-rolled significantly, and people were worried that it was going to be the most tax-raising spending budget in history. It went on and was proved to be so. What does Ed Davey decide to ask a question of the Prime Minister as his first question as he stands up to address the House? It's about Nigel Farage and Nathan Gill. Now, nail your colours to the mast on this. Nathan Gill, who was the leader of Welsh Reform, has been in prison for 10 years for taking Russian bribes. We now have Ed Davey banging on about it in the House of Commons. What are you saying? Are you accusing Nigel Farage of also taking Russian bribes?
What we're saying is there is a really serious problem of Russian meddling in our democracy.
Right.
And we put pressure on the Prime Minister to call an investigation into Russian interference in our democracy as a whole.
Oh, so not just reform?
Not just reform, absolutely not. Ed Davey put his question to the Prime Minister, and when the Prime Minister said, oh yes, of course Nigel Farage should investigate this, but said nothing about whether he as Prime Minister would investigate it, you will have seen all of us Liberal Democrats on the benches starting to heckle and respond to the Prime Minister, because we think it's the Prime Minister's duty to hold an investigation into this.
Just to quote Davey in the House, a traitor was at the very top of Reform UK, aiding and abetting a foreign adversary. Nigel Farage and his party are a danger to national security. What evidence have you got to back that up?
The fact that Nathan Gill has just gone to prison.
Yes, but he's no longer in Reform. So why are Nigel Farage and his party now a danger to national security? By implication, you're saying that they're also being paid by Russians? Is that what the Lib Dems are saying?
We're saying that so far they have refused to launch an internal investigation into how this was allowed to happen and whether there's anybody else in their party who had links to him. So we're all putting pressure on Nigel Farage to investigate this. Given that Russia at the moment has invaded Ukraine, they are stealing children, they're abducting children from Ukraine, they're interfering in our democracy.
But by this Liberal Democrat logic, you could conclude a former very high-profile Liberal Democrat, Cyril Smith, who later got found guilty of abusing young boys. Are we saying by implication that all Lib Dems should have been investigated for that at the time that Cyril Smith was exposed?
No, I think what we would say in any situation is where those things have occurred, there has to be investigations into who knew what and when. Is there anybody else that has to be held to account? Okay. That is absolutely fine. But our question was not just about reform. We do think that Nigel Farage should conduct an investigation into how this happened.
But do you think he's taking Russian bribes, yes or no?
I've got absolutely no idea. That isn't an allegation.
That's the implication, isn't it?
That is not the implication. That is not the allegation that we're making.
Okay.
We are asking him to do an investigation. What we are also doing is asking the Prime Minister of this country to launch a second Russia report to find out the extent of Russian interference in our democracy in any political party.
All right, no, fair enough. On to the BBC. The other obsession of Ed Davies right now seems to be Robbie Gibb leading a, quote, right-wing conspiracy aided by my newspaper, The Telegraph, and presumably others on the right. He's not neutral or impartial. He needs to go. Well, why didn't the Liberal Democrats make this point when, for instance, Labour advisor and donor Gavin Davies was appointed chairman of the BBC board? Again, is it just because Robbie Gibb is a righty?
No, it's... When Boris Johnson was Prime Minister of this country, he watered down the independent appointments process for the BBC. We Liberal Democrats think it is really important that the BBC, as our national broadcaster, belongs to the British people and not to any political party. So it's really important that now, given that the BBC is found itself in this crisis point, this is an opportunity to make sure that we can make sure that anybody on the board is appointed through an independent process. Now, I'm not entirely clear what that would look like. We can either go back to the system that we used to have.
So if there are lefties on this board, you want them to be ousted as well, do you?
I think anybody who is overtly party political should not be involved in that process.
But people who have been overtly party political have been appointed to the board in the past, including Labour and Liberal Democrats.
Look,
why didn't you call those appointments out?
Look, what's really important is that in the past there was an independent appointments process where people who even if they had an affiliation, overall the board could be independent.
Everybody knew Robbie Gibb's affiliations. He had worked as communications director to Theresa May for
and many of us have been calling it out for years.
Nothing was hidden. This is the other problem with this kind of quest to get Robbie Gibb removed. It rather overlooks the key findings of both the David Grossman and indeed Michael Prescott report, that the BBC has been biased. Why aren't you more concerned that the national broadcaster lacks impartiality than you are about Robbie Gibb's role in it all?
Oh, we are. We are concerned about this. Look, the fact...
Because Ed Davey hasn't really mentioned the impartiality issue. He just seems to be going on and on and on about Robbie Gibb.
I think you may have missed something there. The Liberal Democrats have been running a anti-BBC bias campaign for months and months and months.
Well, do you think it's too biased towards the right, though? You're arguing that it showcases reform too much.
We absolutely are. Reform is on there a lot. The statistics are out there about how many times he's been on Question Time. And also, it's not just the number of appearances, it's also whether he's also held to account given the same level of grilling.
How many people voted for reform at the last general election?
How many MPs do they have? Look, we can cut this pie many ways, but he is not given a grilling in the same way that other MPs are as well.
First past the post suits you down to the ground now. So I take it the Liberal Democrats have completely abandoned their quest for proportional representation.
No, we are fully behind calls for proportional representation.
Are you?
Yes, we absolutely
are. Even though when you actually win fewer votes than Reform, you end up with how many seats?
Look, if the last...
64, Reform ends up with 5. You actually got voted in by 600,000 fewer voters.
Yeah, and we still believe in PR because we are principled about making sure that every single vote in this country actually matters.
Here's an idea, Daisy Cooper. You and Reform could do a joint campaign for PR.
That's not going to happen on my watch.
Because they like the idea of PR. Although I'm wondering whether you parties still like the idea of PR, really, when we've kind of ended up with PR by the back door, haven't we, with a kind of multi-party system now with the Greens and your party or whatever it's called also involved.
As a point of principle, we Liberal Democrats continue to support calls for a better proportional system so that everybody's vote actually counts.
All right, well, I'm going to get somebody else in the studio now. Thank you very much, Daisy Cooper. It is great to see you in the studio on GB News. A Liberal Democrat on GB News is a great thing to see. We'll ask Kemi Badenoch whether she might now want to support proportional representation because of the Tories' numbers in the House. Thank you very much. What a show it's proving to be.